I think that's a huge flaw in our society, especially in Hollywood, because it's only further confirming that they're no good unless they are applied to those generalizations and assumptions of that culture.
I feel like they're just putting us in these categories, in these boxes, and they don't really cast women of color for their talent or for their abilities, just for the stereotypes that people believe are true.
Unfortunately, it's something that I'm used to. I think growing up, watching women of color play certain roles, I mean, they've always played into stereotypes, and so we become immune to it and used to it, and we start to view ourselves through these characters. And the older I've gotten and the more aware I've gotten, it's infuriating that in 2019, as far as we've come and as much progress we've made, there's still these subtle things that are keeping us back. I just think that it's gonna take more people to be on the other side of the camera to make those decisions so that women of color can not be in these positions where they're playing into a stereotype.
I really like Laura Jean from To All the Boys I Loved Before. The way the movie represents her is just how everyone should be represented in a movie, I feel like. She's just a person.
I believe that at least every woman of color has fallen into a stereotype, at least a little bit. If it's just like how they're viewed in social media or the expectations, it's really hard not to fall into stereotypes because that's what people base characters of color off.
Viola Davis, although we see her as this monumental actress, which she is, she's still been in roles where she's been portrayed as the angry black woman. I just still think that every black woman has been through that point where she's been casted as what she's perceived as by society.
I do not feel represented because I'm not white, so I can't relate to them the same way I would with a brown female. So that kind of pushes off for me watching like movies where a white female is the main lead.
When I see a white woman playing a lead role, I feel connected to her as a woman. Like, yes, stand up for us women out here. But for me, my identity is more than just being a woman. Like, I'm a black woman, that's how I identify. And I say that because there's a different type of struggle and power that comes with being a black woman or any minority woman that a white woman cannot portray in a film. So why I feel connected to her to an extent, it's not all the way because what my truth is and my being is not being represented by this woman, not to diminish what her truth is because she's doing a good role, but I'm just not being depicted.
The show that was on Netflix on my blog, this character, Olivia, she was played by a white girl, and this character, what happened to her were that her parents were deported, and her being a white woman and her parents being U.S. citizens, being European descent, being legal in this country, not having faced the judgment and the social obstacles, like for lack of words, she wouldn't be fully able to understand what a person has gone through, especially with their parents being deported or the fear of your parents being deported. She might know a little bit, she might do some research, might feel some type of sympathy, but she won't ever fully, completely understand the story and how it actually feels.
That really shaped how society looked at a race because it shows that society doesn't really look at my race at all. They kind of push it off to the side instead of pulling out just white females to be leads, and even when they are in leads, they have very small parts. And so when they're pushing off like brown colored females, they don't really show what they can do and the types of talent that they have.
I don't think people sometimes even know that we exist or acknowledge, or they don't even see an issue with that. I know growing up, I didn't have really a character that I could really identify with. It wasn't having someone that looks like you or the same background as you kind of empowers you to have a little bit more motivation as a child.
I don't know if it's more so how they viewed our race, but how my race views itself. When I was a little black girl and I'm looking up and seeing like Cinderella and all the princess being saved, being white, I then look at myself as if, you know, why isn't my race depicted that way? Or if I do have a race, why are we the first ones getting killed off? Or why are we the janitor, you know, just like extras in movies? So I think it just changes the way how your own race looks at yourself. But I also think it makes your race seem like weird. Because think about it, if you're drawing a character or like you use a cartoon on a homework assignment and you use a black character instead of a white character, it's kind of like you're going out of your way to choose that character, if that makes sense. Like, it's not natural. So I just think it kind of dehumanizes any other race that isn't white because we're not used to seeing it all the time.
It's created the notion that we are a minority in society, and that, you know, everything you see on TV, you aspire to be. So if you don't see yourself represented, then you don't think you can be that kind of person or pursue that kind of career. So I think it's important to include more people of color so that kids can watch and be like, I can do anything I want. I think a great example is when Black Panther came out. There's a lot of little girls and boys from the Black community who aspire to be, you know, heroes, and there's never been a reaction so powerful than that at the movie theaters and, you know, all over social media. So I think spreading positivity like that and showing that the color of your skin doesn't affect what you can do in your life is most important. I think it's not okay because women of color are more than just sexual objects and a vessel of sex and things like that. We have brains too, just like people with lighter skin tones, just like white people. So just because we are different shades doesn't mean we're any less important or less valuable.
My friend, she was kind of nervous to start talking to this guy because the media portrays women like her in a certain way, and so she was scared that he would just think of her as some exotic, like, sexy woman that would just be willing to do anything, because that's what movies were depicting her as.
It makes me really uncomfortable. We're mostly seeing, like, when you sexualize a woman or just anyone, makes you feel more like an object rather than a human being. It doesn't make you feel like you're worthy and that you only have one purpose, which that purpose is to give pleasure to other people. And that's not what we're here for. We're here for ourselves and no one else. Or there's been times where I'm like, well, there isn't any Latinas who do this, so what makes me think that I can do this? With my group of friends being majority white due to the academy that I'm in, I always see like films having like these white women always living like the luxury life and having all these like fancy cars and like having these great jobs and having the perfect home, perfect house. And you don't ever really see that with women of color. So it kind of makes you feel like, well, it's not meant for me. I don't deserve that, but it's just that like representation that kind of influence your way of thinking.
Sometimes when I think about my own life, I just think about my white friends as like the main characters because that's how movies represent them, and I'm just like the background character to my own life.
Just really shot caller positions, and I feel like even when we are in those type of positions where we're big balling or the CEOs, they still make us angry. Like, you do this and you do that, and since I'm a woman in charge, I have to be angry. Like, no, there can be women in charge and not have that stereotype of being angry and bossy and lonely, not having a love life. The woman who can do it all, and I feel like people are gonna say, oh, that puts a certain pressure on women to be CEOs and have a family, do all this. But for men, it's like when they have that in roles, it's like they're living the life. You know, they got it all. But when women do it, it's like, oh, you're putting pressure on women. That's unobtainable. Like, people really can't have it all. I think it's just a mental stigma that comes with it that we place mainly on women. Like, oh, you have to choose one or the other. So just seeing a woman who's able to balance the whole thing, but also we see that there are struggles but that they're not stagnating.